Penn transgender swimmer Lia Thomas. Let me repeat what's happened here. University of Pennsylvania had a male swimmer named William Thomas that was on the UPenn men's team. And then this guy decided that he wanted to become a woman. And so he not only became a woman, he then changed his name to Lia and joined the Penn women's swimming team. Won the 500 meter on Thursday night, 500 yard, whatever it is, the 500 in swimming to become the greatest women's swimmer this year, NCAA champion, first place. And then ended up competing at a high level in the rest of the competitions. And ESPN is covering the Don't Say Gay bill. They didn't even cover hardly the Lia Thomas story in any way. Didn't even bother to cover it because it is a direct threat to women's athletics, but it's a direct threat to women's athletics that doesn't allow their pyramid of victimization to be fully established. Let me explain what I mean. In order to pick a side here, and let me be clear and transparent as I can be, I do not believe that biological men who decide to identify as women should be able to compete in women's sports. Shouldn't happen, okay? I disagree with that. I am picking a side, as everyone should have to pick a side. I am standing on the side of women's athletes, on the side of Title IX, on the idea that women and men should compete separately because men are bigger, stronger, and faster than women. And as you see in this situation, a mediocre to bad men's college swimmer who decides to become a woman can become the best women's swimmer in all of women's athletics in college. Could also happen, I believe, at a pro level. And this threatens the very existence of women's sports because, as one of the women's swimmers told Outkick, right now it's just one swimmer who is male competing as a woman. At some point, it could become many male swimmers competing as women. Even then, how in the world are you going to end up in a competition with men competing against women when they are bigger, stronger, and faster? And by the way, trying to create evenness of competition is the very foundation of athletics. Kids of the same age compete against each other. I coach Little League kids. The reason why we do that is we know that if a 9-year-old got to play with 5-year-olds, he would be really good compared to the rest of the 5-year-olds. If a 16-year-old got to play in the Little League World Series, that 16-year-old would be a lot better than the 12-year-olds. We know what happens in these situations. Men are better than women. Same thing, by the way, even inside of sports, we have weight classes. Because if you allow a heavyweight to box against a flyweight, the heavyweight might well kill the flyweight because the heavyweight is bigger, stronger, and maybe sometimes even faster. But the grand scheme here of competition is that like competes against like. Men against men, kids against kids, and weight classes against weight classes. Even in high school athletics, we allow big schools to compete against big schools and small schools to compete against small schools. And all of this is fundamentally broken as soon as you create a situation where a woman is competing against a man. It represents the end of women's athletics. ESPN won't cover it. CBS won't cover it. NBC won't cover it. Pretty much the only place that's covering it is Outkick. And thank God that we exist, because if we didn't, this story would be almost non-existent. Speaking of non-existent, right now the Babylon Bee's Twitter account is non-existent. Babylon Bee, wildly hysterical, really funny. Seth Dillon runs the Babylon Bee. He was just on the Clay and Buck show with us. If you guys didn't hear it, I would encourage you to go check it out. Really interesting discussion. So they criticized USA Today for naming a woman who was born a man and now works in the Biden administration the Man of the Year. And so I got to tell you, makes a lot of sense to me. and I always ask this question. Remember when Rachel Dolezal, who was a white woman living in the Pacific Northwest, I believe Washington State, remember when it came out that she was actually a white woman pretending to be black? She got totally destroyed. Her life basically ceased to exist in terms of being considered a serious person. And everybody argued that it was wildly offensive that this white woman would decide to identify as a black woman. Well, wait a minute. If changing your race is racist, why isn't changing your sex sexist? Because I got to be honest with you, most people, I think, watching or listening to this right now, would agree with the proposition that you have more in common with someone of the same sex than you do with someone of the same race. In other words, if you go from being Asian to Hispanic, but you're still a man, that's less substantial of a change than going from being a man to being a woman. I think almost everybody would agree with that. Well, why is it not in any way questioned when someone changes their gender, but when someone changes their race, it's unacceptable? It's racist to change your race according to left-wing values, but it's not sexist to change your sex. I would love for someone to explain how that can be possible, given that much of race is a cultural construct, whereas biology clearly defines whether you're a man and a woman. Unless you're one of those people who happens to have sex organs of both, that's a relatively uncommon biological reality.